What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the One More Rep podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph Percher. As always, this episode is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements, Crystals Bikinis for all your trunks and suit needs, and Bio Longevity Labs, the most reliable and trustworthy peptide source in the U.S. I am joined by my good friend Josh the Moses of Muscle Jefferson and Coach Austin Brown. Josh, how you doing, brother? What are we 48 hours out? When are you going on? Saturday?
Saturday. So I don't know. They're
Yeah,
50
however
something
many
hours.
hours that is.
Yeah, something like that, about 60 hours or so.
What?
Sliced now.
Yeah, 25 pounds in a week. So I had sushi on Saturday night post show, so to elevated weight, but from last show to now, about 15 pounds ish.
Ready. No Hail
So
Marys this time. Ready.
hell yeah, let's fucking get it.
Yeah, you look shredded, man. You look really good. What's the order for the divisions on the day that you go?
Masters bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding. I want to say Masters Classic, then Classic, but I could have that backwards. And then thankfully last year they had men's physique with the Masters all on the same day. And like they didn't finish prejudging until 5:30 p.m.
Yeah, I think men's physique is tomorrow.
Yeah. So men's physique is tomorrow. So thank God they don't have that. So should
Oh,
be
so you
even
you
out.
guys have your own day of just bodybuilding and classic? That's nice.
Yeah. So
Because it's a long day anyway. There's so many classes, dude. The
mhm.
universe, the old heads come out of the woodwork for the universe, dude. There'll be bodybuilders that are 70 years old trying to get that pro card.
Oh yeah. It's that's when I found out last year that Universe is actually like a retirement show.
Yeah.
Like I literally watched people walk off stage and they were like, "All right, hanging my trunks up, we're done." And I was like, "What do
It's
you mean?" They
it's
were like, "I
an
got my pro
open
card."
national show for all of the, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but all of the lesser divisions, like basically everything other than open bodybuilding. It's a national show. And then for bodybuilding, it's like a retirement home.
hmm Yeah, I did not realize that. Like, I remember I sat backstage last year. It was my first national show ever, and I sat there and I was like, "So, like, what's going on here? Like, there's some 70-year-old bodybuilders here," and they were like, "Oh yeah, this is me hanging my trunks up. Like, I'm the only
Yeah.
person in my class. I'm getting my pro card, and I'm done."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, then why'd you do it?" They were like, "To say that I'm a pro bodybuilder before I retired."
I brought Kels to Universe a couple times the past couple years, like when we were still living in Jersey and I had clients. And anytime those guys come out, I lean over to her and I say, "Hey, just put a pillow over my head before you let me do this.
Yeah, just call it.
Don't let me out there at 60 years old with a banana hammock and
Well, you
loose
won't need
skin."
that. So,
Yeah.
I love it.
Um,
What
all
are we
right.
doing
So
today?
so we're doing like kind of just a PED episode. I put up rate my cycle slash theories. So I got a whole crazy array of things that people wrote in. Um,
Should be
let's
fun.
start with this one. This guy writes in and says, dropping clan on refeed days is dumb. It's a long half life. What do you guys think?
It's funny because he might be saying that because I've mentioned doing it before. Um,
Well, a
yeah,
lot of people, I don't think it's just you. And it's not someone that's like, I know the guy, it's a friend. Like he's not.
sure. No, it's all good. I see his point, but it's also dumb to be definitive in that statement as well because yeah, it is a long half life. So what does that mean if we're utilizing it on the day of the refeed as well? We're stacking it on top of that existing, amount that is already in our system, right? So it is a compounding build of this, this substance in us. So yet you'd be lying if you say you don't feel an acute effect from clenbuterol as well. Um, in the first 4 to 6 hours of using it, right? That's going to increase our resting metabolic rate. So to me, I do utilize that technique because it's like it's the same thing as like I'm going to pull fasted cardio that day as well. Why are we going to do two opposite things? We're increasing thermogenesis with cardio and clenbuterol and maybe other lipolytics, but then we're attempting to lower fatigue, which these things are both increasing fatigue. We're potentially looking to fill a physique out to potentially gain some data on visuals at that point if we're closer to a contest. We're looking to breathe some life back into training performance. So like by keeping those things in, you're kind of working against the grain a bit. Also, it's just mentally, I find beneficial for people to drop the stimulants for a day. You get to that point in prep where you're kind of just stemmed out, right? So I like to drop it, say, hey, like chill today. You're getting a step count goal. I want you to hit, say you've been doing 10 or 12. Okay, we're hitting 7 or 8 today. No cardio, no lipolytics outside of your thyroid. We're going to feed up today, drop the fatigue. Maybe potentially, if we're within that 4 to 6 week window of the contest, we're going to get an idea. We're going to get some data on what this does visually to get an idea of that where you're actually at from a conditioning standpoint. So I like to utilize that technique for that reason. It, is one way right or right or wrong necessarily? No, but that's my rationale behind why I do utilize the removal of it.
I personally think it goes back to kind of what Joe was saying a couple days ago. When it comes to like, sorry, brain is mashed potatoes right now, but the idea of like you could turn around and almost elicit a refeed by just dropping back the output perspective.
It's the same
So
thing.
like you can only redline a car for so long until the car just goes into overdrive and you're going to destroy the fucking car or destroy the engine. So if you are ramping up and ramping up and ramping up, and then you're going to turn around and you're going to use a refeed to kind of like bring you back down, or I guess, stoke that metabolic fire. If you're constantly just ripping, 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 you could pull a little bit to turn around and maybe give some digestive relief of not having to push the food quite as high. I don't really have a true opinion on this just because I don't think that it's exactly necessary, but I think that there is some merit to it to turn around and saying like you could turn around and pull the food down a little bit, or if your refeed would be 4,000 calories, you could maybe go 3,500 and pull the clen down a little bit to just kind of balance it out, give yourself that digestive relief, and also just not be redlining the car constantly.
Yeah.
This is why we're a good panel because I agree with this totally. I completely leave it. I think in that sense, like if you're saying like, oh, I can lower the clen and then that means I can give the guy less food, like I'd rather give him as much food as possible. Like
Yeah.
that's going to be way more enjoyable and like satiating to him if he's feels like he's eating a lot of food all day. I also think there's something to be said for the half life. Like I've never heard you say this, Austin, but I've heard people say like, oh yeah, like on a 1 day refeed, like I'll pull the clen out, people eat more carbs, the stimulants are out, they'll sleep better. I don't start seeing an improvement to my sleep until 4 days after I've dropped clen. So I don't know where that came from, but I don't see that as application at all. And I think that there's something to be said when you are doing your refeed, unless you are 3 days out and peaking this person for stage. I think that all throughout the prep leading up to that, there's something I prefer to have as many variables stable as possible. Because if I'm leaving Clennon throughout the remainder of this prep, now this is just another swinging variable that I'm pulling it out at random for 1 day. And then it's like, this is going to change. Like you said, this is going to change your metabolic rate. And now if like, am I going to do this every time then? And, I just prefer to leave it. And if that means that the person needs to eat more food, then so be it. they're going to be loving it. It's going to only be a good thing. Like I just don't see enough benefit compared to, no, it's not that it's a negative, but it's just more sliding variables. So to me, I don't think it does much, if anything. And so I'm just personally going to leave it.
The end of the day, it's mostly minutia here, right?
Yeah,
And I would add that like most settings, if I'm doing a feed up, it is more than a 24-hour window.
right.
So the
So if you're pulling it for 3 days, 2 or 3 days, that makes a lot of sense.
right, right. So
Also,
that's
I think it becomes your new baseline too. Like if you're running like 80 micrograms of clen every day, that is your now baseline. If you turn around and you drop that out,
Right. You might
how
only come back to 60 or 40 or something for a couple of, like you might get a couple initial days when you bring it back in at 40 or 60 and get a similar benefit.
yeah.
yeah, or on the contrary, drop it for 3 days and you've been at 60. That drop it for 3 days, you come back and now you're at 80, and then we see metabolic overdrive, right? And typically 3 days after, so it's kind of an example setup that I will use is we're on a base plan, we flatten out, okay, and training performance and other feedback, gives me rationale for a feed up. The lipolytics are pulled, and then we go into a new base plan that's less calories, potentially more lipolytics, potentially more cardio, and almost 9.9 times out of 10, 2 or 3 days into that, we're going to see an entire new physique from a leanness standpoint. It's just different strategies.
You always feel it today.
Thoughts on just super duper high test and an AI for off season with a boatload of GH? This guy's speaking my language.
I was gonna say,
Did
I
you write
think
this
Joe might
question?
have written
I
that one.
didn't write this one in.
Well, with the DHT crisis of America
I know.
right now, we're going to see more of this. It's not the worst option in the world. From a health perspective, like typically we will see more deleterious health markers with super high testosterone from like a CDC perspective, et cetera.
Blood pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, blood pressure, all of these things. So it kind of depends on what's your definition of super high test. I think pushing test up to a very like maxed out limit is a should be kind of within the cycle design anyway. Um, but if we're talking 3 grams of test with 2 grams of AI every day, like I don't, I don't think 2 milligrams of Arimidex every day, I don't think that's a great approach. I would push it up to a kind of a maximum range. Maybe that's anywhere from 700 to 1200, and then bring in some other compounds, and on top of that, if you can't get your hands on something non-aromatizing, then yeah, AIs needs to be in place, obviously, to offset that ratio.
Maybe. I mean, I see you wouldn't expect it or think that it's possible on paper, but I see EQ modulating, or sorry, I see EQ modulating E2 on a lot of guys if the dose is high enough.
Well, it's kind of one that's in between, right? So
Yeah.
it aromatizes about half the rate of testosterone. So it actually does modulate E2 like to a degree while also aromatizing to a degree. It's kind of like a 50-50 type of thing. Now, like DHB, which is also Boldenon, it is kind of the non-aromatizing version of EQ or Boldenon. So like if that was in place, that could act as a primo or a masteron or another non-aromatizing compound and offset that androgen to estrogen, ratio that we're talking about. So yeah, I mean it does modulate it to a degree. So if that was the other half of your cycle design or a portion of your cycle design, you probably would require less AI than if it was 2 grams of test versus a gram of test and a gram of EQ, right?
That sounds fun though. What's the most tests you guys have run?
Well, I was looking the other day because the coach I currently work with was saying, "Hey, like, what was your most beneficial stack design, like in a growth phase?" And I looked, and it was like 1250 test.
Felt like an ox.
It felt fucking amazing.
Yeah.
It was the best cycle I've ever felt. Period.
What else? What else was in there?
I think it was 1400 primo,
Wow,
1200,
that's nice.
and like 300 deca, 3 to 400 deca,
Oh, fuck yeah. Now we're talking.
and like just a little bit of AI in there, like every 3 days,
Sure. Yeah.
like a milligram of 8x.
You know what?
That
It's probably going to be extinct, and I've always kind of leaned towards Masteron in the comparison, just because it's always real, it's always cheaper, the concentration is always higher, so it's less oil. But man, there's something like, especially when you get up into some numbers like that, there's something really like clean and fresh and round about high dose primobolan.
No, I agree completely. Luckily, I got my hands on like a higher concentration one that didn't absolutely destroy me
How
from
much?
200.
Okay, yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, it didn't wreck me either from like a pit perspective, but like I've ran mast extremely high and I've ran primo extremely high with a similar stack design, and like both yielded extremely good gains, but from an anabolic feel and a performance
Like
stand,
roundness. Yeah.
primo was better.
My joints felt way better too. Like anytime I've jacked the mast up, I at some point, even man, there's times where I had like decently high test. I think I ran like 800 test, 1400 mast one time with no AI. And I still reached a point that I must have bottomed my E2 out and my joints were fucked.
Same. I can't run if I run mass like that. I can't run a AI whatsoever.
Yeah.
Uh, and even the high primo, I had a really interesting experience with that, and I didn't have it. It suppressed E2, but estrone was extremely elevated
So you
in
didn't have
like
the symptoms.
into like the 400s, like extremely high. Which I typically won't even pull that marker, but I did because I do have some pre-existing gyno and I was having some sensitivity, and I was like, what
Oh
is
shit.
so I just wonder, like, somehow I don't understand it because it's the inactive form of estrogen, but somehow it did cause like me to be slightly symptomatic, but not to the degree of like, hardening
Did that
form.
make you think it was EQ and not primo?
It had me really scratching my head until I saw
Yeah.
two was in a pretty good spot. So that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but that's when I brought in the AI because I was like, well, fuck it, I'm
And
gonna bring.
Josh is like most tests 500 milligrams.
Josh is like, yeah.
I was just gonna say it was like I don't think it was over 800, and that was during a prep
Have you ever run 2 grams?
of gear total.
Yeah.
I think just below.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I
So
remember when I signed out, I had been with a different coach for a very long time who's got his own ideas about PEDs. And then I left him eventually. I was like, man, I just feel like I'm being held back. Like I haven't made a jump in progress in years. I'm the same size all the time. And so I hired Justin Harris, and in his like onboarding email, which I assume is just kind of a copy and paste email that he sends everybody to get started, it like explicitly said, like, I am not going to tell you what cycles to take or how much to take, but I will tell you that if your goal is open bodybuilding based on your structure, open bodybuilding starts at 2 grams. And I was like, oh fuck. Like I had been at like 1200 total, like ever before that. And then it was, and he laid that on me, and I was like, fuck, really? No way. Like I hadn't really heard people talk about it. And then I hit him back, and like, I had always been around 4 or 5 IUs a GH. And I'm like, what about growth? And I had heard people say this, but I like almost callously, or like kind of like in a funny way. I always took it. And he hit me back in with like a 1 sentence answer and was like, as much as you can afford. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah. It's the difference, right? We
He
kind
was right.
yeah, we kind of went through that at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. That's
Part of me wishes that I would have started that at 21. Um, and then part of me is kind of grateful that I waited as long as I did because I still have I feel like I still have quite a bit of mileage left. But all right. So a bunch of people just wrote in cycles and then wanted to hear our opinions on it. This guy writes in 750 tests, 600 primo, 300 mass, 15 IUs at GH, 50 milligrams low sartan, and 12 and a half milligrams HCTZ, which caught my attention. So the low sartan is just a different ARB.
yeah. And then 15 IUGH,
Yeah.
1650 total androgens, 750 being test,
Yeah.
900 DHT. And then
Yeah.
what was the last compound?
12 and a half milligrams HCTZ. So he's using a diuretic to manage the water from the GH. And I messaged him personally because I was like, oh, this is interesting because he's on 15 IUs in an off season. And, as I've spoken about, when I did that in the off season, I couldn't tolerate it with my hands and my arms. And so I messaged him. I was like, hey man, how has this been? Are you experiencing any carpal tunnel? And he's like, not at all. This has been a game changer for me. So I'm gonna have that on hand once I start the off season. I'm gonna get some and keep it on hand.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not extremely versed on what type of diuretic that is.
It's hydrochlorothiazide.
It's okay. It's thiazide. Okay, perfect. So, and he's using 12 and a half a day.
Yeah, that's like the starting dose, like minimum dose.
I would really like to see where his like electrolyte values are, like from a blood
Yeah,
work perspective. That would be my thing. Like what are we doing from a potassium and sodium standpoint right now?
right.
Like where's your resting heart rate? Um, like that would be my concern. Maybe like I would potentially entertain the thought of doubling up on the low sartan or switching to like 80 milligrams of Telma instead to see if that does the trick. Or if you are going to use a diuretic, maybe like switching to like an aldactone and dropping out all the potassium in your diet, like because that will basically spare all the potassium that you do have in your system. But like as far as the stack design itself, I think it's pretty good. It, I don't know if he's tolerating that amount of testosterone with that DHT to test ratio is probably okay. Like he's probably doing fine. If he might need to use a little bit of an AI, which can also benefit the water retention perspective. If I would go ahead and run labs here, Izzy to up, bring in some AI because then you can manage water better. See your CBC counts. Like, is potassium fucked? I would want to make sure that that's not bad. I would check his resting heart rate to make sure it's not, hovering up above 90, 100 all the time because of the potassium sparing from the diazide. Um, but I mean, from a design perspective, like I don't know how big or of a person this is or anything, but they could get away with probably more androgens if they wanted to. I would,
Especially on this much GH. Like it's almost like you're not maximizing the amount of GH that you're taking with this androgen load.
yeah, I would like peak dosage for at least 8 weeks, probably bring the total androgen load up by like 750 around that like 2500 mark at least.
Yep.
Bring test up nearing 900 to 1,000, and then the rest via your DHTs, either test or either mass or primo or a combination of the two. But overall, I think it's a decent setup. It's an interesting strategy. So I would just take a look at labs to make sure that those things I mentioned are in a decent spot between E2 and like his electrolytes.
Yeah,
I
like
feel
this
like
is this is barely 100 milligrams per IU, which I've heard people recommend 250 milligrams per IU in a blast.
Right.
So
Yeah. So yeah, he is,
And for me, if he's tolerating it, man, and like you said, eventually, like at some point, if he's gonna bring in some mild AI in, maybe in a milligram or 25 milligrams of aromacin like twice a week, like Monday, Thursday or something. My next move would be more tests. I'd probably push the envelope and see how much I could tolerate. I'd go from 750 to a gram, and then if that's totally fine, I might go to 12.
Agreed.
I pretty much was gonna say, I think realistically, when it comes to stack design in general, it all just comes down to how much can that person tolerate just based off their blood work. If we're
And
trying to
what do you tolerate? Like it's safe for use, it's high test, it's nandrolone. Like everyone has all these different ideas about how to put them together, and it's like it truly has to be like on an individual base. Like, you hire one of these coaches, and I was at some point I was like this too, where it was just like blanket statement, you're going on high DHT, mild test. And then it's like, well, that might not be right for this person. You know what I mean? It's just like, to me, it's like GH and tests should be maxed in terms of what you can afford and tolerate. And then all the extras are just like, what doesn't fuck you up? What is tolerable for you?
yeah,
Do you like DECA? Does it give you crippling anxiety and a soft wiener? Like, can you afford Primobolan? Can you get good Primobolan at this point? Does EQ make you a crazy person? Does it bring your hemoglobin to 25? Like, whatever these extra ones, like they all are pretty similar. The only one that I would say, like we got asked about this too separately, like what are the thoughts on um Victor Black and J3U saying every steroid is the same milligram for milligram. I generally agree, like I loosely agree in terms of like benefit milligram for milligram outside of some of these like exotic like mint or whatever or DHB or whatever else. And I would include trend in that. I don't think trend falls into that mix at all. You start going milligram for milligram of trend with everything else, and oh buddy, you are gonna run into some shit.
I was just gonna say, I strongly disagree with that one just because of trend. If you
Yeah.
turn around, you try and tell me that a gram of trend and a gram of test are the same thing. No, they're not. Sorry, they're not even fucking close.
One of them makes me feel like a strong, capable man, and the other one makes me feel like a convicted felon.
That's the perfect way to put that. I started feeling like that this week from the mint.
I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about it, but tell me about your experience with it.
I just had that day where I was like,
You
I
said you were feeling edgy.
edgy as fuck. Yeah, just like like don't look at me weird at the grocery store type edgy,
No way.
Yeah, and then I was like, pause, I was like, hold on a minute.
Fuck.
I had some like life stuff, like stressors were high
Mm,
as
okay.
well, like, but the response to those were different. And had to like stop and be like, hold on.
Was that your first run with it?
Yeah, and I will say it's almost the exact same feel as trend to me. Uh,
Really?
yeah, you feel I've did trend in the off season one time, and from a gym performance standpoint, it's extremely, extremely beneficial. And that's how I feel with the mint. And now that I kind of now I'm finally feeling those other like side effects from it. So it's just something that have to. It's like trend. I think like 10, max 15 a day is plenty. If to
I
get
couldn't tolerate 15, dude. I tried to bring it back up. I got prescription sleep medication, and I'm like, oh, I might be able to like counter this. Nope.
yeah, yeah. So it's
Was that affecting your sleep at all?
I'm sleeping fine. I had a little bit of pre-bed anxiety and then
Yeah.
sweating, but
Mm, okay.
is deep and is fine. So that could be, I think, with low food. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
with it's eating in a surplus, I think that protects the sleep aspect of it.
Yeah. Interesting. Visually, do you feel like it was giving you that like sharp trend look, or
Very
um,
vascular,
mm,
leaner in appearance, although weight's coming up,
yeah.
roundness,
What's
all
the what was the dosing? Same thing, like 10 milligrams,
15.
15 a day. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't used it, and we get anytime I put one of these up regarding PEDs, we somebody asks about it. Somebody had asked whether or not this person's going straight to the deep end because they asked like, oh, with the primo mass shortage, what do you think about my secondary comment or compound being DHB? And I'm like, man, this motherfucker just skipped a whole bunch of shit and just went straight into the deep end. Like, we're
Yeah.
not talking
Amazon.
EQ, NPP, DECA. Like, man, this guy just went straight in for it. I'm not doing that. I'm for most of the people that are struggling with DHTs, I'm going EQ as long as there's no like, I have some guys that are just pre-existing like blood pressure demons, so it's out for them. But um, yeah, interesting. All right, so this guy writes in, he's on 500 test, 300 mass, 300 primo. He does a half a milligram of ADEX twice a week. He's on 8 IUs at GH, and he said bloods look solid. What's my next bump?
All of it.
Good answer. At minimum, I think the test needs to go up.
Yeah, I think the AI here in place, bump the test 250. Your AI can stay exactly where it's at. You're fine. From there, maybe bring the other, if you want to do it at the same time, bring the DHTs up a couple hundred milligrams a piece. Let that ride for 3 to 4 weeks and assess. And performance stalls again, visuals need, if they're softening and things that way, then you feel like you need another increase, kind of that same stepstone like we talked about, working test up to that higher tolerable limit up between 900 1,000, and then progressively bringing the DHTs up in kind of a stepwise process. He's at like almost a 1-to-1 right now with the DHT to test, like maybe max it out at like a 1.5 to 1 ratio between the DHT and the test. But yeah, I think next, if you just said what's the next move, is just probably bringing the testosterone up. Blood should look great with that 1,100 total
You
androgen.
said you said they look good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a clean.
That's a
Well,
cruise for me. Let's keep it real.
yeah. I mean, that's a pretty relaxed start point. So I would don't be afraid to get more aggressive. Now,
You know
if
what? This is not. I'll say this in his defense, and I don't mean this in a negative. This is not a big person.
that was my next point. If you're new to bodybuilding, you don't have much
No,
tissue.
no, like structurally, like not a big tall person.
Fair. Yeah. So if this is relatively high for your androgen exposure, then yeah, it's fine. But it's kind of like per cycle, you should look to elevate that to some capacity by at least a few hundred milligrams to, as new tissue is accrued. So kind of look at like what was your last stack max load, and then work towards increasing that by maybe anywhere from 3 to 500 at your peak. But yeah, up the test, man. What do you think, Josh? More test?
Always. I think that is realistically, even for myself, when it comes to the off season, that is going to be the route that I kind of go down myself, is pushing that up.
Well, that's
Uh,
some fucking GH too, dog. To see what it's about.
yeah, I
Like
mean,
just those two. Leave everything else the same as you always have.
this last the last 2 weeks, my GH was higher than it was before, pretty much during the entire prep. And I mean, I see a lot of fullness differences. I see a lot of
Shocking.
changes. So definitely something I'm going to, implement a
Did you
little bit more too.
did you pull it this week, or are you gonna write it through?
I
Take it the night before the show.
I was planning on pulling it as of Thursday, mainly from a aspect of
If your
um,
pictures you sent me today were with it in last night, keep it in.
Take it the night before the show.
You're dry, you're lean, you're flat, you're dry as a desert. Keep it in. You're tolerating it well. It's not causing any retention at all.
This guy writes in and says, theory wise, is HGH the unlock that people say it is? I'm taking that as he's asking, like, is it like a game changer, like people say that it is? And my answer is no, until you start using bodybuilding doses. So if you're going to use 6 or less a day, or even worse, 5 times a week on training days, like that's, guys, there's no reasoning behind that other than budget. Like that's a poor man's protocol. 5 on, 2 off, training days only, all this other every other day. Like, no, take it every day and take as much of it as you can afford and as much of it as side effect wise you can handle. So 6 IUs a day or less every single day is not game changing. 10 or more a day for long durations, like your entire cycle or an entire off season or 6+ months, that is game changing. That yields a tangible, big difference.
All this being said, that the variables that matter much more than gear are being handled properly as well, right?
I'm just taking it that this is someone that's locked in as us and every
Training hard and
aspect is nailed for years on end. And
yeah.
then it's like, if that is the case, yes, this can be the one thing that's changed and makes a tangible difference on its own, but it needs to be hot. Man, I have people, I've people that write in about this or whatever, people that listen to the show, clients, and they're like, yeah, I'm really excited, I'm starting on 4 IUs a day. I'm like, cool, that's basically a hormone replacement therapy dose.
Right. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like you're utilizing an entire another anabolic pathway, right? Like you have your androgens, and that's anabolic, and then you have IGF-1 and driving that high. And those are our two options from, yes, we have this cellular peptides and things now that, prove beneficial in certain ways, but like at the end of the day, like those are the two ways that we can tap into anabolism is androgens and IGF-1. So you're literally unlocking it. You're opening an entire new room of gains that you didn't utilize before. So yes, it can absolutely change things for you.
And to your point, like I think it's even goes beyond 1+1 = 2. I think they're the synergy when they come together, it's 1+1 is 5. Like, because then
100%.
you're talking about hyperplasia of cells and all this other shit. Like it's a I stand nothing to gain from telling you guys my experience or my opinion. Like I have seen this firsthand with dozens and dozens of people, including the body that I live in every day. Like you want to hear a raw, unfiltered, firsthand experience, life experience. Maybe not, maybe 10 was overboard. From 8+, it's a dramatic change from anything else that you've ever done.
I was
Completely.
going to say from the cell proliferation aspect of just being able to have more cells in general.
Right.
If you have more muscle cells, you'll be able to have a higher propensity to have bigger muscle.
Bigger muscles.
Yes. So in
I
short,
mean, this shit works, guys. Like, it's like, that's not, I've said it on here, man. You talk to any of these guys, any like high level national guys, pro caliber guys, active pro guys. Man, I listened to a thing the other day with Roman Fritz where he's like, guys, I don't know what people are talking about on Instagram and YouTube about 4 IUs, but there's an entire enormous faction of big bodybuilders that are using 20 IUs a day. It's like, this is commonplace behind the scenes.
yep. So
So
Yes, absolutely.
I'll tell you, I don't know if I've talked about it publicly. I'm going to that end of the fucking deep end after the show, after the season, I should say.
20.
I'm going to do 24.
I would like to top out at 20 this blast.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm going to
doing
say, and you know what? Instead of metformin, or, I'm sure I'll use insulin at some point. I'm not going to bother with metformin. I'm going to run a milligram of retatrutide and have that manage my blood sugar. And it also is going to give me a whole other fucking host of benefits.
daily.
No, one milligram a week.
I was going to say, okay.
That'd be great. That would crush me, dude.
I think like I kind of like the microdosing approach of like half a milligram every 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
Uh, yes, but I agree that that will be a great setup. Yeah,
The
buddy.
reason that I just haven't done that yet, so I want to see, like, if I can just do 1 mil. The reason being, Paul Barnett is, someone from our demographic, older guy. He's actually a type 1A or type 1B diabetic. And he posted about he took 1 milligram shot once a week, and it changed his blood work on top of managing his blood sugar. Like for the bet, like all lipids, triglycerides, everything improved. His HDL came up, his LDL came down, like miracle drug stuff. And it's like, so if I can just get that from 1 milligram a week, and also my thinking is like rebound off season, I want my appetite. So if I'm getting the benefits from a once weekly administration, but the back end of the week, my appetite picks back up a little bit. That's not a bad thing. I've done like daily microdose and prep because I want it in me consistently all the time.
Yeah.
What do you
So I'm
run
going to
right
try it.
now?
What's that?
What do you run right now during prep?
I've, man, I'm really winging it, to be honest with you, just based on how much I'm eating and how I'm feeling. Um, there's been a couple times I've skipped a day or two in a row because I'm like, you know what, this is like I'm on low food and I still barely even want to eat my food. So I'll skip it for a couple days until I get back to feeling hungry, and then I've been consistently the whole time since I started it between 200 and 300 micrograms a day. So basically 1.5 to 2 milligrams a week total.
Seems solid.
I think any more for me, even at very low food and very high output, like very low body fat, I think it would crush me. I think I would not even want to look at my food.
Yeah, and you can run into some like there could be some digestive distress side effects as well if you go a little too aggressive with it.
Yep. Yep. So I never even wanted to touch that point.
It's working,
I
man.
didn't want distension. I didn't want any, like, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted the benefit. There are like tangible fat loss composition benefits that are to be had from it. Um, and then like the mental effects have been just huge. And I seem to be getting that at like these, what I would consider to be lower doses from what I hear other people doing. So it's like, why would I do more?
It's just kind of working in the background to your benefit.
That's it. That's it. It's just software running in the background. That's a great way to put it. So I'm going to try that. I'm excited about, listening to people that have used it in the off season. I'm excited to try it. I have clients running it like during immediate post show rebounds that has changed that process for them. And, like the idea, it makes you, it not only does it help manage your blood sugar, but it makes you more efficient. Like it takes the stress off your beta cells because it's making it's providing more efficient use of your body's endogenous insulin. Like hearing that, it almost makes me think, because it would force you to produce more insulin when you do eat carbs, right? So you'd be more insulin sensitive. That I hear that, and I almost think somebody would be more anabolic than they might naturally be in a surplus.
More insulin sensitive, more anabolic.
Yeah.
Are you
So
gonna run the IGF-1 as well?
I'm going to run a fuck ton of it, dude.
I'm
Yeah.
doing on chest days right now, so we'll
How
see.
is it? Are you what, LR3?
Yeah,
How much?
decent amount, 200 in each.
in each. Yeah, no, that's from what I have seen. I saw some reports on Twitter, especially. I follow a lot of these like actual research people. And I saw a post from a guy who's like a PhD. They study this shit in a lab. And he made a whole post about the whole long thread about IGFLR3. And he's like, a lot of bodybuilders say that they point blank get nothing from it. And then you ask them what their dosage was, and it was like 50 to 100 micrograms total per day. He's like, we have seen the starting point for benefit at 400 micrograms per day.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just doing it pre-workout on chest days, and like I don't know, my chest does actually feel like quite a bit fuller, and I do get that like neuromuscular connection benefit from like the injection prior and
Yeah.
stuff. So, so far so
Anything, are you doing intracarb shake? Because I've like just knowing what it is, it's insulin like growth factor. So I could see you almost it could bring your blood sugar down. Like I've heard some people say they go hypo during their training if they aren't using intracarbs.
not right now, but my pre-meal is rather hefty, and I will have that
Okay.
yeah, I'll have that like pretty acute, like hour
Pretty
out,
close. Yeah.
30 minutes later, the IGF, and head to the gym, and probably within 45 to 60 minutes be within in my first working set.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna throw all the shit at the wall following the season and
I'm excited for it.
see what sticks. Like I'm even gonna continue a lot of the fat loss peptide protocols and supplements that I've been doing, like continue all that with fasted cardio, but then eat in a surplus and train like an animal and take take enough drugs to grow and see what the fuck is up.
I'm excited to see it, man.
Yeah. All right. I
You
think
give me all these ideas.
yeah. It's fun, man. I'm just running an N, we're all just N of one, right? Like it's all just an individual experiment. And I just more and more the past couple years as I like went from working a corporate job, bodybuilding for myself, and then having like people that I helped on the side versus being a full-time coach. This is me rationalizing my own use, but I almost feel like a part of my responsibility as a coach is to experiment and see what's out there.
I was literally about to make that point. Like it gives me so much rationale to something I may or may not try previously to say, like, let me give this a shot to say, if
Yeah.
it's horrible, great. Now I know. If it's
Right.
great, great. Now I know. So
Right.
um,
If it's a total waste in 2 months, a client comes to me and says, hey, what about IGFLR3? It's like $70 per milligram. I could tell him, dude, it's a waste. Save your money, put it towards GH.
yep. Yeah.
But if it's awesome, they're gonna know. They're gonna see it. I'm gonna docu the same way that I've done like the prep vlogs. I'm gonna do the whole. I'm gonna continue that through with the prep series and or with the rebound and just document everything. Be as honest as I always am. Tell everybody everything I'm taking, everything I'm eating, and
I'm excited for that, man.
let's see. Let's see what's up. All right. I think this is a good spot to end it. Josh is a couple hours out from the stage here, and I don't have much more mental capacity than he does. So you've been kind of carrying us, Austin, and I'm going to pull the plug on it. So
Yeah, I felt a little chatty this episode, but you guys did
it was
good.
needed, brother. It was needed. I got on here and I was like, I do not want to say a word.
No, it's good.
So yeah, no, it was good. Everybody that's listening, the last 5 minute crew, wish Josh good luck in the comments. And until next time, guys, we are out.